Everybody. So we are doing a panel on group cosplay shoots, and we have our lovely photographer friends here that we have forced into being friends with us and doing various things. We're going to go through and introduce each other. So we are No One's Designs and a part of Horsemen of. So I'm Jackie.
And I'm Garrett.
I'm Degan. I'm in Degan Marie Photography, and I'm a writer in Horsemen of.
Your turn, Tony.
Oh.
We're all organized different on the screen, like no one knows.
I'm Tony with Tony Joy's Photography. I'm a photographer, and that's it.
A friend.
Hi, I'm Connor. I'm Chokozuma on all social medias, and I'm a photographer. That's it.
No, and a friend.
And a friend. Devin Paul.
Hi, I'm Paul. Frank and Nats on Horsemen of.
Dead. Cosplayers.
Cosplayers.
And
You guys are terrible at this.
Okay. Okay. So first thing we start off with any idea, is an inspiration board. So I'm going to go through and let Devin Paul, Tony Degan, and Connor talk about what they like to do, but a few key steps is to have an idea. So if you go to a photographer, it's nice to say, hey, this is what I want to have shot, and these are some of the ideas that I have. Not everybody's going to know everything about every single fandom, so it's nice to give them some type of context so they can look up other things, they can get some inspiration. Pinterest is great for this. I actually hated Pinterest for the longest time, and then when we started doing this, this was really all that I used it for. And then also you can share it with your photographer. So if you have a bunch of stuff saved, you can send it over to them. They can pick and choose what they think is doable and what they find interesting. Deb, you're Pinterest queen. What do you add?
Like you covered it. Like, yeah, you just save pictures and send ideas for posing or different backdrops you maybe want or group photos.
Cool.
I think with Pinterest, the really key thing for photographers is like the posing, the lighting. I find lighting to be really easy to find inspiration on Pinterest for. So like when Jackie came to me with like Persona 5 things, I was like, okay, cool. Well, you have a lot of really intricate lighting in some of these examples. So it's easier for us to like be able to recreate that piece of art into a real life situation if we can see background, lighting, posing, etc.
For me, I really enjoyed Pinterest because especially you'll start to get a feel for the kind of mood that your client wants. It's like if they want something cheery and airy versus something dark and moody, just you can see that just at a glance by kind of seeing what kind of art that's posted on the board.
For me, when I get photos for inspiration, I like to first ask them, do they want to recreate it or do they want it to be inspired by? So whether we're going to shoot for making it with the same poses, the same lighting, the same kind of location, or if we're just going to use that as for inspiration for the mood, the feel, and the tone in the photo. So.
And I guess it's important to remember it's not, you don't have to use the same exact characters. Like I'll send Degan just pictures of Vogue models from a magazine if I want like more of a high fashion layout. It doesn't have to be the characters you're posing as.
Yeah.
Yay. Thanks, guys. Okay, art versus reality. Pizza butt. So we put a couple of these things on here as examples and things that we've brought the three of them before. So the Dabi and Shigaraki one, we really wanted to do that as close as possible to the point of we ordered, what, a 36-inch pizza to be able to do this.
It was glorious.
Yes. And then other ones that are more inspired, like the Last Supper one, that was pretty last minute. We were at the shoot, and I don't even remember who, somebody was like, we should do Last Supper for Persona 5. And we just pulled up a photo, and obviously we didn't have as many people, so we just did something similar. But this is the time where you really want to communicate with your photographer and say, do you want an exact replica? They can tell you if it's possible, or if you're wanting to be fun and change it around, kind of like the meme one too, we changed the characters, and just communicate exactly what you're looking for.
And I think from like a photographer standpoint, just being honest with your client, like the pizza butt one, for example, we were very limited on space. So like obviously the angle that the artwork is from, not going to be exactly doable, but we did the best that we can. And as long as you're just upfront with your clients and you tell them that, they typically seem to be okay with it.
Yeah, unfortunately, especially when it comes to artwork as well, it doesn't have to even be from the same fandom with the same character. If you like the pose, you can use it, and you can always use it as reference. So, like, we are not cosplaying Jesus, so I think
I mean, I was channeling Jesus.
you were channeling. That's true. The spirit was there.
I think
Well, and I
another
think, too-
important thing with artwork is like a lot of artists, like when they draw things, that's not like a pose that a normal body can typically do from time to time. So don't be like upset with yourself as a cosplayer if you can't get into like a really bendy pose, or if like your arm just doesn't twist that way. Like that's totally normal for that to not be able to happen. So just like when you go into recreating artwork, have those expectations and like that reality check with it.
And I think
And-
too, sorry, when you
Go ahead.
use go ahead, Deb.
I said, go ahead.
Okay. When you use artwork that's like outside of your fandom or fine art or photography, it's a little bit of an easy cheat sometimes, because somebody else has already thought about the composition and the lighting and how everything is going together. So it is a good resource to thumb through instead of just looking at either official art or fandom art.
And just if you do use artwork like this one, I did ask the artist for permission first. So just make sure you do ask and then credit them for their inspiration.
Yes, crediting is super important. Sorry, I didn't credit Da Vinci on The Last Supper, but I feel like he's fine with that.
Copyrights go outdated.
Yeah, exactly. It's expired. Okay, choosing your location. So this is probably one of our most favorite things, and also one of the most stressful things. So with a lot of our photos, we like to also kind of log our memories of our trips and some of the adventures that we go on. So I'm going to let Tony talk about these because I kind of put him through the ringer for the road trip shoot. But you can either do something exact. So for example, the road trip photo shoot, I really, really wanted something to look as close to the game as possible. And I found this road on the way to Meteor Crater. So I put the picture of Meteor Crater because I felt like that fit in the game too. And it looked perfect. It was actually even more perfect when we got there, but it was kind of a gamble because it's 3.5 hours away. So taking 7+ people plus renting a car and caravanning up there and hoping that you're going to have daylight and getting everybody together on time was a little bit of a challenge, but it was so worth it. And then there's also other locations like the Science Center, and we'll show you a couple other things that were shot there that look different, that has a lot of different areas around it that don't look like the same place. So if you can find something like that, you can do multiple like moods and sets for photos. Tony?
All right. So when they came to me with some of these ideas, they had very specific looks in mind. I scoured. I like to use Google Maps and then go in with their satellite view and check it out, and that kind of gives me an idea of what's going on there. So we found quite a few roads that would fit this. We were trying to hit multiple locations, which made it real tricky. We had like a whole day and we were trying to hit Grand Canyon, Meteor Crater, Superstitions. We ended up only hitting 1 or 2 of those spots. And we just, like the road, when we found that road, it was really important to me not to have that curve at the end that's in the sample photo. I wanted that road straight because that's the way the game art was. So as we're driving, I'm looking in the rearview mirror, watching the road until we got that perfect straight line into the horizon. So it wasn't a matter of we knew where we were going, we just knew what we were looking for. For the other ones, we wanted something that was more realistic with the space and the glass and the stone, and then they wanted the the other images to show more casual city feel. So we found a location that had all of that within, you know, a 2-block radius. So it takes a lot to know what places have what. Best thing is Google Maps or other photographers. Don't be afraid to ask them, hey, where'd you shoot that? Sometimes they'll share, sometimes they won't, but you'll never know unless you ask. Same with other cosplayers. Ask them where they shot those images. Or sometimes you have no idea and you just put it out there, and the most random people will get back to you and say, I know this perfect place and it's right around the corner and you've never seen it, but it was right there.
That's how I found that horse. It's Facebook. And also, and we'll go over this too, but be safe with your location. We did a lot of shots in the middle of the road. There are not a lot of people going to Meteor Crater every single day in Arizona. So it was fine to have a couple of us shoot and then have somebody watch to see if there were cars, because there was probably only like a car that came every 10 minutes or so. So, and most of the time they were like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? This is so cool. So they'd slow down. But yeah, be safe when you're doing things like that too. Degan, Connor?
Location scouting is just kind of one of those things, like Tony said, Google Maps is going to be your best friend. I love using Google Maps Street View a lot, because then when I'm personally driving, I cannot like look at my surroundings really, because I find that very dangerous. So that's why I like using Google Street View. If I get like a generalized area of kind of where I think I want to shoot, I'll look at that to see if I can like look into the distance and find something that I think is cool before actually like wasting the time like driving down there, for example. But also you can do a lot with your location, even if your location's really ugly. Like I've taken pictures of my backyard before and you would never know it was my backyard because we've just manipulated the lighting and the angles of it. So while locations can be super important, like there's other factors that can improve it too if you are unlucky to find like your perfect shot, you know?
Anything I want to cover is on the next slide.
Okay. Okay, so usually what we start off with is our ultimate dreamy dream situation, and then it can be brought down from there. So if you shoot high, then you can see what's possible and what's not, but if you don't ask, you're never going to know. Big one is how far the location is. So a few of these we've had to travel far for, and when you do that, you definitely need to make sure that you are paying your photog for their time. If there's traveling involved, you have to think about gas, food, lodging, and transportation if you need a crew. If you're doing something like that, you might need more handlers, you might need more people for lights, there might just be more equipment, stuff like that. Also, can you get to it legally? So there's a lot of places that we wanted to shoot, but it's probably breaking and entering and or it's not very safe. So you want to check that out beforehand. You don't want to put all this time and money into planning and then not be able to finish the shoot. Yeah. And then do you have to pay for the location? So some places don't allow commercial photography unless you have either a permit, a license, or you rent the space beforehand. So usually when it's under 10 people, it's not considered commercial, but you just might want to check with the place first. Again, you don't want to spend all that time going there and then not have to, or not be able to continue.
Yeah, a note on the commercial photography is a lot of places consider commercial photography where you're exchanging money, but that's not always true. If you tell them you're a personal photographer, which is what almost all cosplay photographers are, even if it's for commerce, it's not a commercial shoot. So if you define that to the people that are asking you, you're a personal photographer, you're there to shoot for them personally, it's not for a large corporation or anything like that. That's where the the line is drawn. So sometimes they kick you off of beaches or public places because they can't tell the difference between a commercial photographer and a personal one. Usually comes up when you have light stands or assistants and stuff like that. But if you instead of getting angry, you talk to the people, say, I'm a personal photographer, there's a good chance that they're going to let you continue.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
And using humans as light stands instead of actual light stands, sometimes the appearance of that professional level is brought down a bit.
also be careful when you're shooting in public places, because you don't want to disturb like the actual public place itself. Like obviously anybody can shoot there if it's a public space generally, but places like the bottom photo with all the leaves and stuff, that was a public place, and we're not going to tell people like, hey, get out of our picture, like they have the right to be there too, and they have the right to enjoy that space. So who are we to be like, this is our spot? Like, just be kind and be polite about things. Generally speaking, when you're taking photos in public, people will avoid you anyways. However, like if you find an angle or like a spot there that you want and there's people there, just wait it out, wait for them to leave, because they have the right to be there as well.
And think about what you're doing in public too, because that's a good point. With that bottom picture, that's a abandoned, bombed out church in London. And so while it's not a place that people have, not ceremonies, oh my gosh, well, they hold like services is what I was trying to say. It's still a place of reverence for some people. And so, we're not going to go there and do like some lewd or boudoir shoot, because it can be perceived as disrespectful. So think about the location and who might be there. They're going to be young kids, those types of things. When you go, time of day is probably a good idea as well, depending on what you're doing.
Yeah.
And
Connor,
then
you
to go into like the props and everything, be careful with your props. I'm sure a lot of people saw last year there was a cosplayer who took a fake rifle to a beach, and then a bunch of people were very concerned. So very realistic props and everything, like that's where time of day and location is going to really come to be important, because you're going to have to think about that. Like, is the general public going to be terrified if I walk out with a 6-foot sniper rifle or anything else like that? So just be mindful of that.
Orange tips.
Yeah, and I think because those can be edited later. And the other thing too is it's obvious to most people if there's a camera and some lights and somebody standing there doing like cool guy poses with guns. It's less obvious if you're just walking to the location or walking away from the location with a gun on your back. So things like that, pack away, like put them in bags, take them apart, to do something so that you're not just walking around with realistic weaponry.
And even if a place says they allow props, make sure you tell them what your prop is. You've been turned away with a flower because flowers weren't allowed, but sunglasses were. I mean, so just make sure you check in on that.
I forgot about that.
I've had experiences where a couple places I've called ahead to for the security, they'll usually keep saying, oh, you'll have to ask the head, you'll have to ask the head, you'll have to ask the head to get a permit, even though it's a personal photographer. So just keep that in mind to see if it's worth the trouble being able to shoot in somewhere public.
Yeah, when in doubt, call, email, contact people.
And if you're not sure, have a backup location in mind.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Deborah and Connor, you.
Where am I? I am.
Oh, you're helping with this because you help pose. Don't worry, I added pictures of you. You're welcome.
Okay. So for posing and facial expressions, posing is literally everything in the photo, because it's how the character expresses their emotion and it conveys the mood of the photo. And so whenever you have, scrolling back to the Pinterest board, whenever you have like a mood in mind, it's important to carry the mood of the character as well and be able to carry through with that so you can convey the emotion you want. And so, for example, we have the many faces of Deb and Garrick. I forgot he was there. I just assumed it was Deb.
Deb's really good at Mike.
I mean, to be fair, Mike is blonde. That's Deborah's type.
Well, and
Hop?
I put Deb and Garrick on here too, is because Deb helps me so much with my facial expressions. I'm not great at this, and we have a slide to show you how not great I am at this. But yeah, Deb, talk about what you do. You prep a lot for this.
I do. So when I figure out what character I'm going to do, and what picture we're going to take, like Connor said, you really want to know what the atmosphere of your picture is, whether, like Prompto, the mini face of Prompto, he's either like happy-go-lucky doing his selfies, or then there's a lot of me being like super sad emo boy because nobody loves me. So a lot of it is figuring out what mood you're going to portray and then really embracing it and going for it. I look up other cosplayers who do emotional pictures. You could look up like acting, art, stuff like that. And then I practice in front of the mirror usually. I take a lot of selfies of myself practicing the faces to see how dumb they look sometimes. And then especially when I'm being like sad, I will super get into that emo phase. Ask Degan about my Lance on the beach when I don't know why. I just decided I was going to be super sad all day. But yeah, I really try to embrace the emotions, but practice.
Yeah,
Connor, I had one of those as a video of you, but it's not playing.
That's for the best.
something with posing too that I think is really important. Talk when you're like with your clients and everything, and if like you're showing them. Connor's really good at showing people because that's just what he does. I try to do it. I'm not as good at that, but what I like to do is I'll ask my clients. I'll be like, hey, can I just like move your arm this way? Like, can I touch you? Like, always ask permission, even if it's fixing their wig or flipping their cape or anything. Ask permission. It is so important because that just builds your level of trust with your photographer too, to know that like they respect you enough to be able to ask permission to like touch and everything. And like Connor's really good at coming up and doing stuff, and so is Tony. Like, I cannot tell you how many times Tony has actually had to physically come up to me and turn my body because he's like, no, you don't get it. Like, I am so bad at following direction when people are like, oh, we'll do this. Like, Tony will literally lay it out and be like, okay, turn your hips this way, tilt your head that way. And I'm like, I'm dumb. Can you just twist me? And then it's great.
Same. And don't always base it off of what you see other people doing. You don't know the comfort level. So like with all of us, we've gotten to the point, I tell Degan, I tell all three of you, Tony and Connor are a lot more reserved about it, but like, tell me if I'm making a bad face. Be like, Jackie, don't do that. Whatever this is, stop.
And as being like both, going back and forth between cosplaying and photography, trust your photographer. If they are telling you to put your chin down or chin up, even if you feel really stupid, like have confidence in what they're telling you. Because if you don't have the confidence in what they're telling you to do, it shows in the photo. Like, it shows that you're scared. It shows that you're not sure if like they're being right. Like if someone's like chin up, like, yeah, this looks really stupid from this angle, but from a different angle, it might look really nice. So just have faith in them that they're making you look spicy.
What you're
Don't
paying for.
try something. I think Connor was like, so Deb, we're going to break dance. And I was like, sure, I can't do that. But that wanted me upside down, like Tony's holding my leg up. But at least try it. It could come out super dumb, but then it could come out super dope. So you never know.
Have faith. We see you in a different way.
Tips for photographers. One of the things with emotion and everything is they may have the right facial expression, but if their eyes aren't
Oh, that's
there,
the next slide. Hop it.
it disconnects. Does it talk about that on the next one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the eyes tell everything. So if you're not sure if you got it, make sure the eyes are telling the same story as everything else. Otherwise, the photo is not going to look right. It's going to have some kind of disconnect. I have a struggle with this, but the people that trust me, like they said, if they can do the action or just open up and feel it, like I'll give them cues of how to bite something. I had one with vampire fangs, and she was supposed to give me those teeth out. It took forever, but she finally started trusting me, telling her what to do, and we got the shot. But there's been other times when they're out of their comfort zone. You got to know, okay, Now I'm making them feel uncomfortable. We got to stop trying to get that photo and move on to something else. You can circle back around to it if they start realizing, but otherwise just move on. Let them know. Another thing is some photographers don't like showing the back of their camera. I love it because as soon as they see that image, now they're willing to put their chin up or they're willing to tilt their head because they've seen that it does make them look better. Another thing that works is show them, okay, this is the first pose, this looks good, this is the next one, and this is better. And then they'll start getting, okay, those little changes did make a difference, and they can kind of embrace it. They'll trust you and just go for it, and that's where the magic happens.
Tony is also king of making you scream at him. Don't be afraid to do that because, like, honestly, the photos come out so cool. So if your photographer is like, listen, we're going to draw a lot of attention to you for a moment, but, like, don't be scared of it. And, like, I need you to scream at me. Like, if you're going to go into, like, a warrior pose or something, like, you don't just want to stand there with, like, your sword or something and just be like, oh, what's up, guys? Like, no, you're going into battle. Like, you're yelling and stuff. So, like, really get into that pose. And, like, Tony's always been the guy that, like, makes me do that. And, like, at first I'm really uncomfortable. And then by the end of it, I'm losing my voice because I'm having so much fun yelling at him.
Yes, Tony's very good at that. And I'm always like, he's like, Jackie, that's gonna come across. I'm like, but I'm yelling, it's fine.
Well, one other thing is I'll scream out loud if they're feeling anxious, and me making a fool of my stuff makes them feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
So.
And, like, touching on the photo where Rose is biting Jackie's neck, it is so important to speak words to your clients about, like, what emotion are you going for? Seductive, like, we're trying to make this sexy, or scary, like, you know, with Paul and Garrick, like, it is so easy to just be like, hey, Paul, be annoyed at Garrick, and then the expression turns on immediately. Like, if you give them key words to be able to act out that emotion, it helps. If you're just like, hey, look like this, or like, hey, look cool. Well, cool can be multiple things, so get creative with your words. Like, really use adjectives to explain. Surprised, you know, like, all of these things, so that way people can, like, actually envision, like, oh, this is what I would look like if I was surprised, or this is a memory that I feel whenever I felt scared, you know, and then they can channel that and put it into their photo.
And if you're not comfortable with something, just be honest about it. Like me, Jackie, and bottom, we talked about it. We knew we were going to do that. If someone's jumping in and you do not feel comfortable, just tell them. It's going to show in the picture if you're not comfortable with what you're doing. So don't be afraid to be like, I don't want to be touched, or step back, or hey, this is fine, but not my personal space. It's okay.
And, like,
just be honest.
it's really cool to go over at the beginning of the shoot too. Like, if you know you're going to be anxious about something, just be like, hey, these are my boundaries. Like, please respect them and don't ask me to do that. And you can also say that in the middle of the shoot too if you don't have time to do it beforehand.
And also, if you have people that maybe aren't in the shoot or aren't helping, but you trust a lot, and they know what you're insecure about, they know what you feel good about with yourself, bring them along. We're really lucky that we're all pretty close, and we have gotten to that place with each other. But that is definitely something. If it's just me, I always have Deb telling me what I'm doing, what looks good, what doesn't, because I know she's good at it and I want to learn. And it's also something that I know she knows what I don't like too. And same thing with Degan. Degan will tell me with body things too, you know, like, okay, do this. All of you do that, actually. Like I said, we're all pretty close at this point. But if you know that somebody does something that you want, ask them to show you too.
Another thing we cover is if you're working with a photographer that you've looked up to, or you're super excited to work with, and they ask you to do something uncomfortable, or they're super excited about this and you're not feeling it, you got to show them the respect and the respect for yourself to tell them, look, I know you're excited, but I'm not comfortable, and you got to be willing to walk away. There's nothing more important than the safety and the comfort for people. It doesn't matter if you're paying them a lot of money or no money, or if they're famous or not. Take care of yourself. Make sure that you feel safe. If you don't feel safe, get away.
Yes.
Agreed.
Okay, and here's all of the terrible faces that they have to work with for me. So just to show you, good things can come from really awkward situations. I'm sorry, Paul, I had to put that in there for you too.
It's not awkward at all.
What'd you say?
not awkward for him at all.
Oh. Okay. Choosing your photographer. So Tony made a really good point. Go with people that you're comfortable with, but if you are looking for new people, or maybe you're going to an out-of-state con, we have a couple of ideas for you. Look at their style. So once you get to know somebody and their work, you can see if they are flexible and are able to do a lot of different styles. Some people aren't comfortable doing that. So if you want a particular look and you ask a photographer that all of their posted work doesn't show that, you might not get that from them. So it's definitely something that you want to talk about up front, see what they're comfortable with, see if it's something that maybe they are good at, but they just don't have the opportunity to shoot that often. And then, like Tony said, are you comfortable working with them? Please say what you are and what you aren't comfortable with beforehand. That is probably the most important thing. It's going to come across in the photos. It's also going to be something for you that if you have a bad experience, that's the worst part of this. So don't put yourself in a situation that you are not comfortable in, or that you think you have to. You don't have to do anything. This is all about fun. This is all about you and what you want. And then communicate your expectations. So expectations of turnaround time, of how long the shoot's going to take, what you're looking for in the photos, and that goes both ways. So cosplayer to photographer, and photographer to cosplayer too.
One thing people should look at is when they're looking for photographers are going to show you what they like to shoot. So if they're shooting a style and you want to shoot with them, but you want something different, don't go there with the expectation that you're going to get what you want, and it ends up looking like what they like to shoot. So there's so many people that do that. They go, oh, I want dark and moody. They go to someone that shoots light and airy, and then they're upset when they don't get dark and moody. That's not fair to them. That's not fair to you. Your photographer, I mean, one of the clues that you're going to clue into is show them the stuff you want to do and see what their reaction is. Okay. And that'll tell you whether they're in it or not. If you show them dark and moody and they start hemming and hawing and they go, oh, I want to shoot at 12 noon. Well, that's not going to be dark and moody. So, try to clue into that. Also, there's a lot of people that charge super low prices and they do some great photos. Most of them don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to pose you. They don't know how to get facial expressions out of you. So be aware of that, and talk to other people that have worked with them. Find out how they work. That's a good way to choose somebody.
Actually, on the point where you're saying that, ask a photographer what they're good at, and they'll tell you, that's not always true. Sometimes I'm guilty of it myself. It's like, I need the paycheck. Sure, let's just go for it and see if I can get it done. But at a point for photographers, you have to, sure, push your boundaries and figure out what you can and can't do. But eventually, make sure to be honest with yourself when people come to you. Say, this is what I can do. This is what I don't know if I can do best. Be honest with yourself as a photographer to know what's the best part about you that you can bring in, and see if they'd prefer that instead.
On that note, I'm not super great with candid event photos like I would like to be. I feel like Tony is a lot stronger at that because he's a classic wedding photographer on top of cosplay. So it's okay to have a photographer tell you hey, I'm not super great at this. However, I'm willing to work with you on a deal so that way I can practice this if you're okay with it. I can't promise amazing results, but if you want to work with me still, I'm totally down to try it. If not, I'm going to recommend you to this photographer instead. They're really great at what they do when it comes to that stuff. So just make sure that your photographer's honest, okay?
Building a network.
Photographers, don't sell yourself short, because Connor, you still tell us about groups. And
I was going to say that. I was see, Connor, look at all the great things you've done. And we just forced ourselves on you, and we were like, yeah, it's fine. You can do it. Good job. You might cry a little bit. It's fine.
Crying.
Yeah, but to that point, Connor has always been honest that when he's uncomfortable shooting something or trying, and you guys have been very good at pushing him and saying it's okay.
I've literally said no every time.
And we're like, yeah, that's it. You don't get to say no.
We don't take no for an answer, so sorry.
My light only goes so far.
I did want to explain why we picked these photos though. So this was a very impromptu boudoir shoot that we did in
It's
Seattle
impromptu.
with our friend Rose. What'd you think? Impromptu. Not gonna. I put it there because I thought it was funny since I was like, Degan, we don't have pants on. You shouldn't have pants on. And so Degan took her pants off. So I felt more comfortable. Anyway, not everyone's going to do that. I'm not setting an expectation. I just thought it was funny. Please don't ask people to do that you don't know very well. We went through a lot. Okay, well, we kind of touched on this. You know, have they done large group shots before? Like we mentioned with Connor, we had a bunch of things lined up and I really wanted to work with him more. And he was like, yeah, I don't know. And I was like, it's fine. We'll see what happens. And they came out great. So that's cool. Connor was very stressed out, but
we were willing to take that risk and pay him anyways, even if they didn't come out well. So if you're going to do that and push a photog out of their comfort zone, realize that you're taking a risk. And if you get photos back that you're not like, oh, super happy about, you were the one that pushed them. So that's the risk that you took.
And it's be okay if they say no. Like they are allowed to say no. They don't have to do what you ask. Sorry,
unless you can't say no.
Let's not set a precedent here. They can tell me that I can't say no. You can't.
You can't. Sorry. That's how you're in this panel too. We didn't let you say no.
I would be sleeping right now.
No, you can go back to sleep. It's fine.
I will.
Make your plans and stick to them. I realize that this is a little hypocritical of me because we are usually a little late and everyone says, oh, it's Horsemen. Hey.
But we're honest about it. We're honest.
We're so honest about it that now they tell us to be there at 6 p.m. when they want us at 7.
It works.
We're just late. We don't tend to make last minute changes on ideas because that's a huge thing. If you have to do a last minute location change, that's fine. But if you're all of a sudden like, ooh, just kidding, we did these costumes instead, that's not cool. Photogs do a lot of prep like we've talked about for these. So please communicate all changes with time for all parties to be able to adjust. And then discuss pricing beforehand. So a lot of photographers will ask for a down payment beforehand, especially if it's the first time that you're working with them. If you can't complete this, or if you can't pay this, don't book. So wait until you have the money to book to be able to do that down payment and then be able to pay them upon completion.
Pay your photog. You're paying for their skill.
Yes. Friendos, additions?
No, I think you covered it.
Technicalities. Tony, you want to talk about these?
Okay, technicalities. So, I mean, there's always technicalities with every shoot, but when you're trying to recreate images, take the time to study the light, take the time to study the feel. In these images, the first one was getting a road, getting the car, and recreating this image with the people that we had. We had some challenges, like we showed up and Paul had a lamp, but he didn't have a bag, he didn't have a chair. So, or we just dug out stuff that we had in the car. We got lucky there. So those are little things that you want to think of beforehand. The other thing is, you know, I could have brought a ladder to get a little higher perspective, but in the middle of the road, I wouldn't do that. So those are things you want to think of. Okay, yes, I might need a ladder, but no, it's a safety hazard. When I shot the one of Deb jumping over the car, my first idea was, let's pull the car in the driveway and have her jump over it. Well, that's not really realistic. So we found this post that Garrick had, rolled it out there and had her jump over this.
A lot.
She jumped over it probably 30 or 40 times. And we made adjustments every every time. The final result was a mixture of two of them. So sometimes you got to be prepared for that. One of the things, the technicalities that made the image, the composite image, the blue one with the lightning in the background work, was the lighting had to be lit from 4 different places, and it had to be consistent across all the characters so they all fit into the image. I've seen people where they light each person differently, and then when they throw it together, there's just something wrong. It messes with your eye. So when you're doing composites, you got to be very critical of the light source and where the light's hitting people to make it work, because it could easily just look off. You'll never know what it is until someone points it out. That includes the shadows, the highlights, and then the consistency across the characters.
That's also when we realized that Final Fantasies or characters' heads are much smaller than real people's heads. Oh, and also, do you know how complicated it is to get a rental car company to let you pick the color of your rental car? Let me just tell you, if you think that's easy, have fun. It took literal months just to get a black car. Black convertible.
Any other technicalities you guys face?
I think you pretty much nailed it with the lighting. Like with composites, it's really tough because you need to spend a lot of pre-production time planning out a composite if that's something you want to do. And as a cosplayer, expect to pay for that, because composites take hours, like hours that can turn into days long. Like I did a Madoka Magica one that was based on a piece of fan art, and I literally had to build a domed floor from scratch, and it took me forever. So when you're asking for things like the one that Tony did of the Final Fantasy characters, like that's a lot of work. It's a lot of lighting, it's a lot of color grading, it's a lot of like finding various images on stock websites sometimes. Like it's a lot of work. So just be patient with that kind of stuff too, I think is also really important, because it is very stressful to do. Yeah, I think Tony nailed it by talking about the lighting, really. I think lighting is the biggest technicality along with posing. Connor?
Well, and also like the Persona one too. So this one was really cool. Connor nailed it with the lights, because there was lights on the floor too for the stage, but something we didn't anticipate was all of the glare on my glasses. So they weren't prescription, so I just popped the lenses out. Never know, and now we didn't have to worry about it.
Technicalities kind of just pop up throughout the shoot that you just kind of have to like work with too. So be prepared for something to be weird on every shoot, because it might be.
Did you want me to bring up angles while we're here?
God, I was tired last night. Okay, if you want to talk, Connor's so good at angles. He's going to talk about angles right now.
Stop. No. Next, please. I want to talk about using people against their will.
Yeah,
To
here you
hold my
go.
lights. There we go. Oh, thank you
Go for it,
including
Connor.
Dracula.
Yeah.
Handlers, assistants, and lighting. If you look at my feed, every single one of those photos has the poor soul of someone who so kindly elected their time to help me light. Every single one of them, pretty much. And I just personally have a complicated way I like to do lighting, to the point where I either need a large C-stand to hold up my lighting, or I have someone just hold it up an extra 6 inches that my stand can't do. And it makes the world of difference to me. And so I think it's Jackie, so that's Garrick. Garrick put it together last night. It was like, if you're coming to a shoot, you're one of 3 things. Or was that Paul?
No, that's me.
Okay. So Garrick put it the way, if you're one of 3 people, you're either the photographer, you're either the cosplayer, or you're an assistant.
Yep.
AKA light stand.
Yep.
AKA a light stand. And a handler can be a lot of things, not just holding lights. You know, they can spot, you know, like hopefully if they are familiar with the costume, they'll actually know if, you know, a jangle is or at a place or a bangle is unglued. Because to me, anime characters are weird. Maybe half their costume is supposed to be destroyed or popped off from hot glue, and maybe they're not. And so it's important to have someone kind of just keep an eye on that and then make sure there's no shirt popping out or the cape is tucked underneath a weird way. Speaking of capes, super popular way to have people help is to just flip the cape a little bit, give a bit of a unrealistic wind blow to a cape inside a an enclosed area. They don't do that, but in anime they do, and that's really the only reason you need someone to flip your cape around. Let's see. I'm gonna read through this real quick.
Well, and even if you're a cosplayer, you don't get away from being an assistant sometimes. If you're doing single shoots, as we can see, poor Dracula here needed to be conscripted to light his son.
Well, one thing you should cover is we always ask people if they want to assist. And the other thing is, as a photographer, when you ask someone to assist or hold a light, if they drop it or if something breaks, don't hold them responsible. You're asking them to help you. It's not their fault if something happens. You are taking a risk. You need to be aware of that.
And sometimes if you're staying with cosplayers, you get roped into this. Like poor George. George had to hold our booze and a lamp. Same with Van. Van had to hold Degan.
It's all about that angle.
Okay, now we're going to go through some work of our Photogs. This is Connor. Connor, you want to talk about these?
Degan, you can cover me. It's fine.
No, you're covering yourself. You can speak
Fine.
for yourself.
Fine. Hi, I'm Connor. I'm a photographer, and that's it. In general, though, I really love going over the top with my lighting. You'll always see me carrying a suitcase, a minimum of 4 lights, literally wherever I go with my camera. It's extremely bad for my back, but this is the kind of work that I come out with. I love using colors. I love using dramatic angles with lighting, and I love just pushing my limits wherever I can, and these guys are the catalyst for that.
Look, these are all groups. There's not a single picture here.
And I think it's important to point out when he's talking about the lighting, the one on the far left, the one Punch Man, that roof is not yellow. That all comes from the lighting that Connor did.
And that's the same place that those darling photos were too.
Mhm.
Connor loves colored lighting.
Yeah, it's a gimmick. It's fine.
It looks so good,
It
though.
looks good,
I
yeah.
love it.
It's
a great
fine. It's
gimmick.
fine. Move on before. Thank you.
Tony. And Tony, we put Tony in very uncomfortable situations and very difficult places to shoot.
So yeah, they're right. I shoot many different styles. I love shooting everything. So that kind of makes me sometimes more difficult to work with, or sometimes more fun to work with. I like shooting natural light. I like shooting lights. I like shooting gels. I like shooting everything. So sometimes I get a little crazy with how many different things I want to do. Usually there's not enough time, or people don't have enough energy to continue with me. But I truly love it. I love the challenge. And you guys have always been great about throwing me challenges.
I'm seeing a trend. So what you're saying is we're difficult.
I mean, truly everything, one of my photography things is life's an adventure. And, what you guys do is provide me with the outlet to have that adventure through photos with you guys. And all of these are amazing memories for me and for you guys. And that's what I love about photography is, we make art, we make experiences, we're making memories. And, it just feels like family. Most people I work with end up feeling like family. And I love that.
We love you too, Tony.
Love you.
So, and I'm very emotional. I love shooting emotion. I love capturing the feel of the photo, the spirit. I always love my photos to tell stories, and that's kind of what you see in my work.
That's what we love. Degan. Yay.
You really picked a color palette here. It looks like I was shooting blue a lot, doesn't it? I just like shooting in weird locations. I think that's kind of my thing. Like I like being put in an uncomfortable situation where I have to really work and think harder about how to make my environment work for me and my clients. The photo of Prompto and Noctis with Iris in the background is actually the photo from when George was holding the lamp. That's how we lit that situation. And we weren't planning on it. Something about Emerald City Comic-Con and boudoir shoots randomly happens. So we weren't even going to take pictures of this, but we all were kind of like maybe mildly drunk. And we were like, let's take some photos before we go back to the con. And then literally that whole thing was lit with a bedroom lamp. So this is like no secret tricks or anything like that, but like we manipulated it to where it felt kind of real, I guess. Like there's clearly emotion across that photo. So it's fun to take a situation that's not normal and turn it into something new. And I feel like that's kind of where my style comes into play. And like Deb as Alucard, we were in England and I didn't take any equipment with me other than just my camera. I was like, I'm not taking lights or anything. Like I love shooting in natural light, and I also love shooting with ambient light, so anything that's available with us. And that was a challenge because we didn't really know what time of day we were going to go. We picked early morning just because we didn't want to deal with people, so we went at like 7 or 8 a.m.
And we were the first ones there.
We were.
Yeah, right when it opened.
Actually, you beat me, which was a huge surprise. But we didn't know what kind of lighting we were going to have, so we just kind of went with it, and it ended up being really pretty. But I guess my thing is just kind of figuring out like what's going to work. The group photo of Final Fantasy. Oh, buddy, is it challenging to be in a photo while also being the photographer? So I tend to do this more often than not, I would say. This one was crazy because like we had a very large space. It was a big like club essentially. And to light that many people with only 2 lights was a challenge. So we just got like a bunch of like big white pieces of cardstock basically, but like in like industrial sizes, and put 2 lights in it and bounced it off to try to light up that room a lot. And then the other one was an art installation that we actually got to shoot in. So that's all available light too. So a lot of the time I like to shoot with natural light, but I can also do strobes. I don't really do the gels. I kind of like let that be Connor's thing because he's really good with that. And gels for me, just like, they're so hard to make technical, and Connor's just like figured that out. So I'm just like, yeah, if you want lighted stuff, just go that way. I'll practice that later on something else. But yeah, I really like natural light a lot.
You're also very patient because that Wonder Spaces shoot with the near one, that was all flashing. So you had to stand there and wait until it got to the bright parts because it didn't stay like that all the time.
It looks like it's so easy to shoot there, but it's just like boom, 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 boom. And it's just like, no, I just got to shotgun mode this and hope for the best. There's Connor with his gel lights.
Yeah. You're so good at it. Okay, we got some questions. So we're going to go through this and everybody can say what they want to on it. How do you manipulate the surrounding when it might not fit the character? Degan, you can go first since I picked you in this photo. You and Deb.
So I think the best part about cosplay and cosplay photography is taking a character and putting them in a situation that's not from their anime, their game, their comic book, anything like that. Like I love doing alternate universes, realities, whatever people use as that term. Like I love being able to pull them into a space and make them your own because that's part of cosplay. Like you're pretending to be that character and like we're putting them into different situations. So Deb and Jackie really wanted to do a milk bath kind of thing, but instead we just did it with like flowers and stuff. So obviously we needed like a bigger bathtub and stuff like that than just like a normal house bathtub. So I actually rented a villa at a hotel and like we did a really cool shoot with all of that. And to manipulate it, it's like one of those things. You never know what you're getting yourself into, so just kind of come prepared. Like obviously ambient light is not going to work in this situation because I am hovering over Deb and I am one giant shadow that covers half of her, and then bathroom lighting is typically garbage anyways, so not exactly the best. But what did I have to do? I had a light and then I had people like holding it. I bounced it out of every corner to kind of see like which lighting was going to work best for the character. And you just kind of make it work. Like it's stressful, but I thrive on stress. So I just learned to make those kinds of things work, and I didn't really have a backup plan. So my backup plan was you're going to make it work or you give people their money back kind of thing. So
Connor?
I do like putting people in that's comfortable with their character's universe, and if it's not in a location that is not appropriate, I cut really tight. And but honestly, like most places you can usually find this. I guess this is where the angles come in, huh? But it's a matter of it's a matter of, like, you know, if you're in a, I have to find a good example now.
I think using that red room at Sabo is a good example. You shoot a lot of different things there.
I do. Can't say I'm proud of it though.
really great.
Well, we are.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
good.
It's a very regal looking room, and I was able to pull out a lot of different looks out of
going
it.
with like the angle thing is like your focal length of your lens can really change everything. Like if you're shooting with a wide angle lens.
Oh, yeah, actually, let me go and cover that. But like, yeah, the type of lens that a photographer uses can change the entire field as well. Like, you know, like a telephoto or a long range lens, you can blur out the background, so you can almost put anyone anywhere with that kind of lens. But if you use something along the wide angle lines, you are putting a subject in their environment and putting them in relation to it. So it's important for the photographer to know what lens to use that's most appropriate, you know, if they want to include in their environment or not, as well as relation to the character. And it's important for the both the cosplayer and photographer to know what's behind them and to say, is this good enough for me, or should we just move to something else? Because you can find a lot of things as long as you just, you know, angle it, get depth of field, or maybe just find a brick wall for something industrial rather than a forest that's like 15 degrees the other way.
See, angles. I was right.
So I shoot at a lot of cons doing mini sessions, and I deal with this a lot. Most of the time the characters don't fit the environment. So the few things that I do is, you know, you make the character prominent in the photo, and you find some color or background that might fit. I'll shoot at convention centers, and some characters come from a green place. Well, they come from a forest with tall trees. Sometimes all I have is hedges. So I'll shoot in front of the hedges and make them prominent in the photo, and it still has that feel because it's not in front of a car or a brick wall or glass windows. So you can kind of hedge it towards those, towards that feel.
Hedge it.
Yeah. And you know, you just, you know, change the angles, get in nice and tight, and you make it about the emotion and the pose, the character. And a lot of times people won't even notice they're not in the right location because they're looking at the cosplay and the person and the pose. And, you know, until you point it out, they're like, wow, that's an amazing photo. And you're like, yeah, but they don't even live in that kind of world. And they're like, oh, I didn't even notice, because they're looking at the photo.
Or like worst case scenario, if you're on location, chances are you're going to be able to find a plain background somewhere within walking range. So if this character like really needs to be in a forest background and you just have nothing but, you know, city streets and stuff, just find a plain wall and work with what you can on that. Like, it's better to have something plain in the background than it is to have something like really distracting, take away from your character or something. So like if you only have a wide angle lens and you're like, well, I don't want this parking lot full of cars with this character who's an elf, you know, like they're supposed to be in the forest or whatnot, just go find a blank wall somewhere and it'll be less distracting and you can focus more on your cosplayer.
How do you overcome being intimidated by large groups?
I don't. Next person.
It's always.
Is there anything you do to plan for it?
You grab a wide angle and I pray.
Drink.
Yes.
My advice for overcoming intimidation by a large group is you're
Being
gonna
a wedding photographer?
well, not only that, but this works for every kind of large group. Is you're gonna direct one person at a time. Don't try to direct the whole group. Okay, focus on each one, and then make adjustments as you go. Because in a large group, that image is going to come together with all the pieces working together. Okay, so you're going to adjust one person, adjust the next, then you may have to go back to the first one, and that's okay. Okay, but do one thing at a time and build it like a Lego kit. That's the best way to attack any large group.
I find it's nice to learn everybody's names. Connor.
He
Characters
knows
only.
our names, just not
Yeah.
he goes with what
Me
they
too.
say.
Just for the simple fact that I find it more comforting when a photographer is like, hey, Degan, can you do this? Instead of like, hey, you do this. Or like, at least know the characters' names if you can't remember their specific name or whatever. Like, okay, Prompto, can you turn this way? Or et cetera, et cetera. Because then it makes your
We're-
clients feel more respected and comfortable and at ease because you're taking the time to know who they are.
Or you
I'm
get,
personally totally fine when Connor calls me Deb.
That might be
sometimes I
Jack.
give them name. I'm like, you're blue shirt.
Yeah.
And I would say, as the cosplayers, know that going into something with a large group, you need to be patient. Listen to the photographer. Sometimes I notice like wrangling cats, but if they tell you to do something, try to remember to do that. Because if you stop, then you're just you're wasting his time or their time, and it's going to take longer, and you're not going to get as good of a photo. So make sure everyone in the group understands that.
On that note,
Try to
like,
be helpful.
yeah, on that note, I know this doesn't really answer the question, but when you are in a large group, please try not to get distracted by each other and laugh too much, because usually when especially if you're in like a Comic-Con setting where photographers have very limited time. So when they slot out their time schedule like that, they need to stick to that, because if they don't, then that typically makes them late for other photos and photo shoots, and then that is disrespectful to their clients and stuff. So come into a group shoot being focused. Try not to be too silly and stuff. Like, obviously have fun, but like pay attention, listen to the photographer, don't be too loud or else you won't hear their instructions, and like stay within close proximity. Even if like subgroups are being shot, just pay attention, like be helpful, be mindful, and be respectful.
And one comment for the cosplayers organizing: don't pick people that don't want to be there, because that infuriates all the other people involved in the group. There's too many times I've seen groups fall apart or have a horrible shoot time, not because of the photographer, not because of the location, but because there's ongoing drama, or somebody just plain doesn't want to be there and you're forcing them to.
Yeah.
That's not fair to the group. That's not fair to the photographer. So keep that in mind. Make sure people actually want to be involved.
And last thing, sometimes you are on a time frame. So like with this photo, we were paying by the hour. We only had 2 hours max before they opened. So if that's the situation and you have a certain amount or things you need to get done, it's really important to have that conversation beforehand. And all of us like to have fun. All of us are friends. But this one we were like, okay, taskmaster, nobody's allowed to get drunk. Nobody can be off task. You are helping people and then you're moving to the next room.
And it's good to have your the photos that you want in order of importance, because you may have to triage and just be like, all right, so these last 3 ones, we're not going to get to, took too long.
Yeah. What makes art beautiful to you? Deb and Paul.
That everyone looks good and is having a good time.
When Jackie's in it.
It just has to like touch me emotionally. If it doesn't affect me emotionally, it's not really art to me. Good or bad, positive or negative. Yeah.
Tony.
Oh, mine's easy. It's always the emotion.
I straight up have to agree. Like, I remember when I was at the Smithsonian last Katsucon, like at the nature photo exhibit, one of those photos honestly just made me cry on the spot. It was just so beautiful. So yeah, emotion.
Mm-hmm.
I think art's beautiful if it makes me stop and go back to look at it. If it has something that makes me be like, what was that? You know, like that's what art is for me.
Yeah, I would say emotion and memories. A lot of these are me wanting to remember all of these times and have something to look back on. And I've noticed, especially right now, since none of us can see each other really in person, it's been really fun to look back at all of the adventures and times that we've had together and feel like, okay, well, we really did make the most of our time. Eric, real answer.
Yeah, emotion, aesthetically pleasing.
You're cut off. I have a good picture for this one. How do you wrangle everybody? I'm gonna go with Tony first.
This goes back to what Degan said. You need to talk to people directly, either by name or something that lets them know you're communicating with them. It's too hard to just try to yell at or talk to 6 people at once.
I
So
did have a picture for that one.
interact with them directly, and that's the best way to wrangle.
I feel like the best way to wrangle is not being afraid of being loud. Because as the photographer, at some point, you're going to have to be like, okay, guys, like everybody needs to pay attention now. This is what we're going to do. Like, this is the order we're going to do it. I think if you give people a general idea of what the shoot's going to entail at the beginning, it helps people keep focus instead of them just being like, oh, well, I don't really know what's happening now, so I'm just going to go and do this instead kind of thing. So just being very vocal. That's kind of the gist of it. Don't be afraid to be a leader.
And honestly, the way to wrangle for me to wrangle is to keep downtime to a minimum. As long as you keep moving, keep that momentum going, people will know they're in the mood to just keep shooting and working, and you'll maintain that momentum.
Who's in charge of the shoot, the cosplayer or the photographer?
No.
Why?
No to both of them. But it's honestly whoever decides to take the mantle. I personally, especially when I work with groups I don't know, I have one main point of contact, like one person that knows everyone, so they know that they can yell at them for me. And that's been helping me a lot, is to just, like, if I can't figure out like a group of 9 people, I'll just have one person who is willing to take charge. So it's kind of a, what's the manager? Yeah, the manager.
Hierarchy?
Sure, supervisor, shift manager.
Great,
Let's
yeah,
go with
both of
that.
those.
Coming from a place of doing both, I prefer when the photographer is more in charge, because generally I'm going to be paying them. They're not paying me to do that. So as the cosplayer, I'm like, okay, well, I'm paying you. Please take charge. Like, you're the one that's looking at us in this environment. You're providing the service at this point. However, also as the cosplayer, like, I want to be able to let you know what I'm expecting. So that really comes into like expectations and talking and communicating beforehand. But I mean, it's kind of like, in my opinion, if I'm going to the doctor needs to be in charge, not me. You know, like, they need to be telling me medical advice, not myself medical advice. So I think it can kind of fluctuate between both situations, where it's like, obviously you need to tell them what you want, but at the end of the day, the photographer is going to be directing you during the shoot.
That's like your prep work, what you want, what's going into it, locate, all that the cosplayer can do. But yeah, when it comes down to the actual photos, it should be the photographer.
Yeah, my answer is similar. To me, I'm in charge of the shooting portion. I'm in charge of setting the lights, setting the camera, taking the photos, directing the posing, all of that. But the cosplayer has to be in charge of letting me know their expectations, letting me know what they're comfortable with. They're in charge of themselves, and I'm in charge of getting the photos. So it is a two-way street. I can be in charge of everything, but then I'm getting what I want.
Yeah.
So, and some people are more than happy to do that. They're just like, Tony, I want you to take my photo. Whatever you want, I'm game. And I love that, but I also love it when people give me, we want you to do something inspired by this or recreate this. So it is a two-way street.
What is the biggest group you would shoot?
How many horsemen plus riders are there?
To be determined.
That many.
Perfect.
I think that question is kind of an open-ended question for the most part. It really depends on what the end goal is for the shoot. Like Carlin, for example, when she did her big Sailor Mew group, like that was like 25 people. You can't do a whole lot of Sailor Moon poses with 25 people. It's kind of more cut and dry. Like, you do your big group poses and stuff like that, and that's kind of it. But like something like this with the Persona 5, you have a little bit more to work with because you have less people. So I don't really feel like there's a number that I would put on as a cap. It's just more of capping expectations than it would be like a group of people.
At some point, it becomes a class photo.
Yeah.
Like it really just depends on how many people are going to be there, and like, do you want a lot of action shots? Doing action shots with 25 people is kind of hard. Like, I'm not Marvel Studios. I cannot end game this where there's people coming through portals and stuff like that, you know? Like, you're going to have to pick and choose what you're wanting out of it. Like, if you just want professional photos to showcase, like, all the hard work that you did as a group, cool. We can do something like that where it's a bit more simple. If you want more themed things like we did this space was really, really small. So Tony and Connor had very limited people that they could shove into that space and make it look nice. You know, like it really just depends.
Yeah. Biggest group, I've shot huge groups. It just depends. You got to set the expectation of what they want versus what you can do. Some of it does turn into class shoots. I've shot 200 cosplayers all standing on a stairway and directed the whole group so that I got every single person in the photo. But it's not going to be action or anything like that. So can you do it? Yes. You got to be really loud and you got to be really clear on your direction. But you also have to set the expectation of what you can and can't do. I always like to shoot, promise low and deliver more. So I'll say, this is what I know I can do, and then this is what we might be able to do if everything comes together.
Under promise, over deliver.
Yeah.
How much is location a factor in planning?
A lot.
So much that there's two slides dedicated to it.
So much that this is an entire panel for it too.
For me, location is a factor in planning because it sets the mood. Sometimes you don't have a choice on location, but when you do, it is everything. Location's going to tell you what time you can shoot there, what the lighting's going to be like. All of those things that are relevant to the location and what gear you need to bring, all that.
Yeah,
For us, oh, go ahead.
For me, it's the second thing that I ever agree to when it comes to a shoot. Like we'll say the character first, and then straight from there, for me, it's location planning, is finding out where we can shoot. Worst case, a self studio somewhere in someone's house. But adding on to Tony, it's absolutely everything. It's like it absolutely determines everything that you can do within that location, and then from there you can start narrowing down to what's possible.
For us, it's something where these are our memories. And so as cool as Photoshop is, and there's some uses for it too, I really like looking back and thinking about not just the shoot, but the experience that we had in that place. So if we can do it at places, or even just, turn it into a event afterwards where we hang out, I really like looking back on those and remembering the whole time, not just the photo.
Well, and to cue off of what Jackie said, Jackie really enjoys locations, really enjoys the adventure, and Jackie is willing to pay for that. Don't expect that to be something that happens for free.
No.
Unless you're
Yeah.
best friends with the people, and that's okay. But those things are worth paying for if you want to do it.
I find location to be like, I can't say it's my favorite thing because like everything is kind of equal across like the things that make a shoot come together. But I think that location along with lighting is everything in a photograph. Like it is what tells your story. It is how you're going to convey everything that you want to with that character. So if it's something that means a lot to you, like take the time, spend the money, and find exactly what you want to be kind of perfect. Or like, if you find a location that's really cool, you can randomly pick a character that you're like, oh, cool, I think this would fit here. Like that happens the majority of the time whenever I shoot with Horsemen of, is I'll be like, oh, hey, this character or this place looks really cool. What character or cosplay do you guys have that can fit into this? Like that's what we did with Wonder Spaces. I saw like the weird strobe light room and I was like, yo, I think Nier would look really cool in this. I've never played the game, but from the things that you've told me, I think this would fit really well. So sometimes location is your number one factor on basing a shoot off of things. That's the majority of how I work, is I just find something and I'm like, cool, let's throw something in here that fits it. And then it just like spirals from there. And that's what ends up making photo shoots so memorable for me, is that we can make something out of nothing.
I agree. How does the photographer determine the cost of a group shoot?
Tony,
Um,
I'm out.
that's a tough one, but the reality is the photographer has to decide, okay, how much time they're going to spend editing the photos. Do people want just group photos, or do they want group photos and individual photos? Are they doing it at a location where you're going to be there for an hour, or are they doing it at a location where you're going to move around and you're going to be there for 8 hours? There's so many factors that go into that price. And people need to realize that some photographers are doing this as a hobby. They don't need to make money. They're not paying taxes. So they're going to charge you a lot less. Whereas photographers like me, when I get income, I have to pay taxes. So I'm paying, 20% right off the top that goes to taxes. I've got fees for receiving the money. All of that goes into effect. So I have to account for having insurance, which gets me into locations that other photographers can't, because some locations, if you have $1 million writer, $2 million writer, you can shoot there because they're protected. All of those things come into play. So be aware of that when you're asking photographers how much a shoot costs and what you're getting from them. Usually when you're paying a photographer, you're getting images back in a certain amount of time. And that, so all of that goes into factoring what the price should be. And then realize if they're giving you a discount, and be appreciative of that. It may seem like a lot of money, but you may also be paying a quarter or less than what they typically charge.
I think
Yeah.
with the determination of a group shoot, when you go to book with a photographer, I find a lot of the time cosplayers aren't explaining what photos they're looking for in the end as edits. Like, are you wanting strictly just group photos? Are you wanting individuals? Are you wanting subgroups within that group? Like, that's going to determine a lot. Usually when I do my shoots, I'm like, okay, you get 10 photos. However, if you're wanting to do individuals on top of it, I'm going to charge you more because it's going to take more of my time. It's going to take more time for me to shoot you guys, regardless of if you're still getting 10 photos at the end of it. Like, I'm going to have to spend an extra 30 to 40 minutes photographing each person individually or each of these subgroups. So that's more time on top of it. So a lot of photographers, when they do their pricing, are going to base by how, like, the shoot of the hour versus just like how many end photos you're getting. So keep that in mind. And also, if a photographer charges you one thing and charges another person another thing, you can't really compare those costs. Like, don't get mad that a photographer is charging one person less than you because you don't know the circumstances that they said. Like, it's not always going to be a base price for everything. Like, there's so many factors going into determining the cost of something. So if you're confused about something, just ask, like, it's just going to be different for every situation.
And speaking of more or less, like, I notice a lot of people will actually charge less than what they normally would at a convention because we are already there with our gear and ready with the intent to shoot many, many people. But if we're asked to shoot outside of con, that's where the prices can really go up for some people, because that's, our weekend or our days off dedicated to another day of work. So keep that in mind, especially.
And typically on location shoots away from cons are going to be a longer shoot time, and they're going to require more planning beforehand and more editing afterwards, depending on what you're wanting. So basically, like, there's too many factors to really explain the determination of the cost. Like, yeah.
And that's another thing. Like with me at cons, I don't bring all my gear, but when I do an offsite shoot, I bring everything I need to get the photos that they want, because they're paying for that. Cons, I'm bringing as little as possible. I don't do what Connor does. I don't break my back bringing light stands and suitcases and all that stuff, because I'm only making 10 cents on the dollar. So that's something to consider too. Connor,
That's a really good place to try out new photographers too, if you aren't wanting to, you know, spend that much time or that much money right away if you're not sure. So it's a great time to kind of test people out and see what you like. Okay. God, this question. All right, Degan.
I'm really comfortable with group lewd shoots. It doesn't bother me. I don't necessarily like participating as the cosplayer in them, but that's for personal, like, self-conscious reasons. But as a photographer,
That's opposite of this photo.
right. As a photographer, I love shooting it because there is nothing more satisfying than like making somebody feel comfortable in their own body, because it's really hard. Like, you can tell, like, Jackie, I'm going to pick on you for a second. When we did the Dabi Shigaraki photos, Jackie was so uncomfortable at first. Like, she was getting so mad at me because I made her stick her butt so high in the air. She's like, this is stupid. Like, I am breaking my back right now. I feel so dumb. And I was like, Jackie, your butt looks so fire right now. And I showed her.
And then Deb and Amber stuck my underwear up my butt.
Yeah, like, you have to be comfortable with it to be able to make the other person comfortable with it. And I like doing it because at the end of the day, like, they really end up enjoying their photos. Deb hates all photos taken of her, and I finally got some where she really liked it, and she was pretty naked. So that says a lot.
Yeah.
So it is an amazing accomplishment to have a person just like glow after they see it, because they've never seen themselves in that light before. And most people are very uncomfortable naked or nearly naked. So if you can make them feel comfortable in that state, you're like a god at that point, you know? It just feels so good to make people feel good.
Yay.
yeah,
Oh, Connor, you got it.
It just came in the mail, like the second.
I'm on the same page. I love shooting group lewds, but again, it's all about comfort. People come to me because they know they're going to be comfortable. They know I'm going to direct them. They know I'm going to show them the best poses and angles for them. And that's anything lewd. You got to be comfortable with who's shooting you, who's in the room watching you, and being respectful of what you're willing to do and what they're going to ask you to do.
Also, show the back of your camera to your clients. It is more important in this situation than ever to show them how they look, because the second that you show them that they look sexy, their entire like aura is going to change, and then they're going to feel so much more confident, and then the rest of your shoot is going to go a lot more smoothly. So take a couple test shots once you get them in like the pose that you know that they're going to love too, and then show them. Do it right off the bat, and then the rest of your shoot's going to be easy, and they're not going to fight.
And also, do not show them the bad ones.
Yeah, don't do that.
Delete them on the spot.
This is not a situation where I enjoy derps. I enjoy derps on everything else. I don't want to see those on here. My fragile ego can't handle it. Oops.
And I think on when you're doing a group lewd, everyone has to be on board and understand what's going into it. If two people are like, yeah, whoever wants in this room, awesome. And then two people are like, I don't want anyone in here but my friend. You need to listen and make sure everyone's happy, because if not, it's not going to work and it's just uncomfortable.
Yeah.
always have an extra person in the room. I don't care if your model's like, I don't really need anybody. Just for your safety as a photographer, have another person there. Just do it. Like, there has been way too many scandals where things have happened behind the scenes and no one was there to like be part of it. So always have that third person in there, and make sure that your model is comfortable with it. Like, if they're not comfortable with it, have the discussion with them being like, hey, can you pick one of your friends that you are comfortable with having here? Or are you okay if my assistant comes in? Like, this is a strictly professional shoot. I just don't feel comfortable having it just be one-on-one. I would prefer to have an extra party here just in case, you know?
Well, and I think lewd covers everything from like somewhat modest boudoir and like lingerie all the way up to full nudity. And that's something that you need. Everybody that's doing the shoot needs to know where the hard lines are. And nobody, when somebody has said, I'm not willing to go past this, don't push. And don't let, if it's a group thing, don't let the other cosplayers push. Like, I think that kind of falls on the photog, whether that's right or not, to be like, no, they said they don't want to do this, we're not doing that.
This is not a place where you can push someone out of their comfort zone. No means no. Absolutely. There is no gray. It is black and white, yes or no.
Okay. How do you guys get started in social media?
There's really only two ways to credit people on social media. You either tag them in the caption or you tag them in the photo. And like, if when in doubt, do both. Like me personally, like I said, I cosplay and I'm a photographer. I am so bad at remembering to credit because I just get so excited to post that I just go post. And then I'm like, shit, I forgot to credit. So then usually like I'll go in and I'll add the tag on the photo itself and in the caption as well. Or like, I don't really care as a photographer, just credit me one way or another. If you don't want it to be in the caption because you want your caption to be more simple and minimalistic, that's fine. Just tag me in the corner. Really doesn't bother me, but other people want both. So.
Always tag your friends.
Yeah.
They worked hard on these photos.
It's best to do both because both do different things. One tells the people that are reading the comments who did the photo, and the other one ends up tagging, especially on like Instagram or Facebook, the tag shows up in the tag folder so that when they go and look at the tag files, they're going to see more of the stuff that was shared than what they've shared. So it's good to do both.
And more as a reminder to creators, don't flame people if they don't credit. Just PM and say, hey, you might have forgot. And usually that goes pretty dang well. Honestly, people just forget. So don't put up a storm for it.
Yeah, people are human. Like I posted a photo that both Tony and Connor did in my story the other day and I forgot to tag them. So I was just like, post it again. Hey, I forgot to tag these two, but these are the two people that did it. Like we're human. We make mistakes. Just like fix your wrongdoings. Like it is what it is, you know? Like just
We all do it. We all forget, and that's okay. So
Okay. Connor's favorite question. What is your dream shoot? We'll give you some time.
No, it's fine. I'll go
Got
first.
it, okay.
I had time to think about it this time.
Good.
But it's more concepts for me, really. I've had a lot of fun creating sets, like in home studios recently. Like my last couple shoots, I like some of my favorite shoots. I like completely built the props and the setting and the backdrop and the flooring from the ground up, and I got some really good controlled photos out of it. So I'd really like to start veering more into that territory.
That's cool. Devin Paul.
Boom, vague answer. Gotcha.
I wasn't going to call you out. You called yourself out.
Any shoot with my friends is a dream shoot. So mine mostly probably like locations. Like I would love to shoot stuff in Japan or New Zealand, Iceland.
I just like, I don't know, hanging out with you guys. I'm usually just long.
Pop out. We're going to come back to you, Paul.
Paul's just like, whatever, just drag me wherever.
Like at a buffet, eating chocolate cake with beer.
Degan.
I have really wanted to do a photo book for a really long time. It is just a very daunting task and it requires like relying on a lot of other people to help, which is why I haven't really started it because it's really hard to get a bunch of people together to make that happen. It's not just like a generalized photo book. I want to do a Final Fantasy 15 book with you guys and like also incorporate other cosplayers from around the world too that also do Final Fantasy 15 costumes. And what I wanted to do originally was basically do scene by scene from the game and recreate that. But that's really hard when you have scenes like Shiva taking over a train car and turning it all into ice. And then like, that's a really crucial part of the game. And how do you recreate that and stuff? So eventually I'll kind of get there. But also I feel like a lot of my dream shoots are just creating alternate universes with characters because like I've gotten to a point where I know I can recreate a scene from an anime or a comic book and make it look pretty close to what it is. But what I don't know that I can do all the time is make a completely new story with these characters that would fit their personalities. So pretty much anything where I get to be 100% in control of the location, the lighting, the wardrobe, everything, and make it more cinematic, I guess, really than just a cosplay photo is like kind of a dream to me. I like making things real and making it feel like you're in the moment and you're not just like looking at a picture. I don't know.
Tony.
One of my dream shoots would be to shoot at an old castle somewhere overseas and shoot all day there and shoot every genre that I could. I would want to shoot something beautiful like couple photos. I would want to shoot cosplay. I would want to shoot horror. I would want to shoot I would literally want to shoot 24 hours straight and shoot everything and everyone I could there and just have a blast, because that would be insane.
That's awesome. Garrick.
I'd really like to do a shoot at the Dune Sea, the dunes on the way to California that they used in Star Wars.
Yeah.
I think that would be really cool, not only to do Star Wars costumes out there, but it's a very unique setting that you don't get a lot of, and I think it's also accessible and possible. So,
Oh, we're coming back to you.
Just go along for the ride.
Glad you went in a noodle bathtub.
Yeah, there you go. You're the worst.
Gladdy at the Cup Noodle Factory.
Yeah, there you go. That's Paul's dream. We're going to say it for him.
Good thing that's attainable.
Yeah. I feel like we've done so many that have been on my dream list, so I feel super fortunate to have been able to do that, which is why we all wanted to do this panel and talk about all of our fun adventures. But 2 coming up would be lots of things in Japan, too many to name, mainly bros. And then also if I can finally find a white field of flowers to do boss for Metal Gear. We'll see. I don't know where to find that field of flowers.
We'll start planting them, Becky.
Yeah.
Photoshop.
No, I don't want them to be Photoshopped, Connor. That's the thing.
We'll find it
plant 'em
every
in my
field on the
backyard.
highway, and every
Color
week
color
go out and
select, desaturate, brighten.
Perfect, done.
Make it an Arizona cotton field.
Ooh, I could.
Or go up to the tulips.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yay!
overtime?
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
joining
everyone.
us.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Wait. Oh, wait. we got-
wait. Don't
Wait.
go.
Sorry, I forgot. And there's our Instagram information.
Link.
So if you guys have any more questions that we didn't cover, you're welcome to hit us up, send us a message.
And we should have links in the video description below. Please follow, like, subscribe.
And thank Arda for doing this.
Yes, thank you, Arda.
Thank you, Arda.
Arda Senpai, thank you so much for bringing us together when we all miss each other desperately.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Love you, nerds.
Love you too.